Welcome into Full Throttle, everyone. My name is Lauren Downey. I'm your host tonight. Alongside me, I'd like to introduce to you my new co-host. This is Chase Wilhelm, and I am happy to have him on board here. We are going to start with a new segment on the show. This will be the first week. That's why we're coming to you via video. We're going to debut a new segment with Eddie DeHaan, spotter for Jeff Gordon, and we wanted to do it up big. Eddie's on the line with us now. Eddie, good afternoon. We're happy to have you on.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
And, of course, now we're just 4 days away from the Sprint Unlimited at Daytona. This is going to be far different than the other, formerly known as the Budweiser Shootouts. Of course, the NASCAR fans have had a lot to do with this race thus far in the offseason. They've been able to vote for things like segments, how they want pit stops. Do they want 2 tires? Do they want 4 tires? And really, the order of the drivers is up to them now, as you can choose by race. Say you got the pull in the Daytona 500 all the way until Homestead. We're going to go in that order. Or they can choose by random. So what's the feeling at the race shop at Hendrick Motorsports right now as to race strategies? Because the fans have every bit to do with this, and NASCAR is going to relay that message to you on Saturday. What's the feeling at Hendrick Motorsports about that right now?
Well, I was at the shop yesterday, but I can't speak for Hendrick Motorsports in general, but I will speak for whispering between the guys and maybe a couple of the drivers. And, you know, you're going to get honesty from me, and that's what you get. And, you know, that's what I'll bring you each week during these segments, which will be interesting for some of the fans. But honestly, the big picture is the points paying race, and that's the Daytona 500.
Absolutely.
Sprint Unlimited is really an exhibition race where we'll get a chance to, under race conditions, check these cars out a little bit more, find intricate ways to pass, see how they draft a little bit more. In the tests that we did back in January, you know, we had the big crash, which proceeded with maybe 6 laps of drafting, and that's it. And everybody packed up their bags and went back to single car racing, testing. So we still don't really have a clue as to how these cars are going to draft with a lot of cars. You really can't get a feel for a draft till you get 20 cars in a pack. 6 cars does nothing.
I'm sorry, we talk about, you know, that was perfect leading into my next question. There's no guarantee that your car is going to make it through not only the Sprint Unlimited, but then you have the duels on Thursday. So it's all about getting to Sunday. However, you know, what's Jeff Gordon's mindset going into that? And do you race cleaner during the Sprint Unlimited? But like you said, it's an exhibition. Do you run a backup car?
No, I mean, I think you race cleaner for the first 3 quarters of it. Don't get me wrong, the pay is incredibly good. Everybody, and these guys would race for popsicle sticks. They just want to win. If they didn't have bills to pay, you know. So I think you'll see, you know, a fairly reasonable treating of each other for the first 3 quarters, and then once we get down to the final quarter, everyone will be pushing and shoving to get to the top prize.
And the 24 car was up near the top of the charts at the test session in January at Daytona. And I'm wondering, did you make any wholesale changes when you came back after Daytona, and either before or after that next test session at Charlotte?
Well, it's different animal totally, from high-speed downforce track to speedway. The car that we tested was a strictly test car. It's not even a car we're bringing back, obviously, because we wrecked it, but we didn't plan on bringing it back anyway. So we have a whole another set of cars for the Sprint Unlimited, our Daytona 500 car, our backup cars. They're all different, all brand new. So, you know, will they drive the same and feel the same? Most likely, because we're getting pretty close. You know, we got our best engine in the car for the 500 qualifying, and so you know, it's a process. It's a 10-day process that you work all the way up to the 500 race.
Hey Eddie, this is Chase. I have a question for you. How do you, as a spotter, prepare for these restrictor plate races, especially the Sprint Unlimited and the Daytona 500? What do you do to prepare yourself?
Well, that's a pretty good question. I mean, the speedway races for a spotter are probably the most intense races we do all year. And then the unlimited versus the 500 is different because the unlimited is so short and the 500 is a fairly long race, and there's so much prestige around it. I mean, growing up as a young child, learning racing and then becoming a driver myself, every single guy that's in the sport has dreamed of someday winning Daytona 500. That's all Super Bowl. So, there's a lot of jitters attached to, everything about that race. That's why you go through the tunnel there and you get chilled down your spine because you know the history of the place. So, as a spotter, I think you got to make sure you know the changes in the off season, which spot is spotted for which car, and know where they're standing. Because if you're gonna hook up with someone, you got to go run to them and communicate. Where we communicate from driver to driver through the spotters, and really just get your mindset correct. Yesterday I went to the shop and I examined our car for the mirrors so I could see exactly what Jeff can see out of the car and know what his field of vision is, and I just look inside his cockpit so I see pretty much what he's seeing during the race. On off season, make sure all your equipment is up to date and working properly. Like I said, the last time I did this show, we have 5 radios, so there's a lot going on.
And with this new Gen 6 car, you talk about getting in that race car, as you mentioned, and seeing what Jeff sees in that car. Do you see, looking what the car was like last year and looking at what it is now, do you see from the cockpit any physical differences in placement of certain things in the car?
The vision field out the back of the car has changed. It's not as good as it was. Not on a bad scale for the speedway cars, terrible, but still more limited. But on the downforce tracks, like when we get to Phoenix and Las Vegas, can't hardly see anything because the spoiler is so much taller and it sits higher up in the field vision. So when we get to Phoenix and Vegas, our role will change where we'll be talking a whole lot more about what's going on behind the driver than we ever have before because he just cannot see.
So you talked about just now the rear end of the cars being a little different. I know that some drivers are concerned that the race cars are going to be a lot looser than cars that we've had in the past at Daytona and also Talladega. As a spotter, what do you do? Do you change anything, like the what you relay to Jeff, knowing that these cars are going to be a little looser this season?
Well, I mean, I can see when someone's loose, and so can he. But I might say it because these drivers, think about it, they're 3 wide going 200 mile an hour. Their concentration levels are off the chart. And so they're trying to process what I'm telling them, and that's talking most of the day. And all I'm really doing is giving him a description of what's going on around him so he can plot his moves. And so the closure rate of these cars was still learning because we haven't been on the track enough with them in packs. So that's something to consider. In other words, think about this. If I want to tell him he can move to the middle from the outside, that needs to go from my brain to my lips to his brain.
It's a process.
Process it, and then to his foot pedals and his steering wheel. So I have to account for that amount of time.
It's a matter of seconds, really.
Yes, split-second decisions that you're making.
Yeah, and so if a guy is closing on us, I have to take into consideration all of that time so that it's a doable or non-doable move so that we don't wreck the field.
And we saw in in the testing run in the pack, the very short time that we had to run in the packs in the test in January at Daytona, and we saw the rear end of these cars not obviously match up with the new front ends of these cars, especially if you're a different make and model. We saw Toyotas and Chevrolets not, get together, not be able to bump draft as well. I mean, this is all something that's going to be new, and we're going to see really at length for the first time on Saturday night.
Yeah, you're right. The Chevrolet's front bumper has a crown to it. The Toyota's basically flat, so the Toyota can push. The Chevrolet, if it tries to push on anyone, it rocks the car pushing back and forth because it's not flat. And so the Chevrolets will not be a good pusher at all. They can receive a push. On the other hand, the Toyotas are a battering ram. They can push fairly easily. So that's a good observation. I think when you'll see that is if we get a green-white checker, where, it doesn't matter. We're coming to the checkered flag. I mean, we saw that in the Sprint Unlimited race last year. In my very first race with Jeff, we lined up for a green-white checker and shoved Kyle Busch to where we were first and second going into turn 3, and Kyle got loose and about wrecked. Jeff backed off a little bit, and the next thing you know, we were barrel rolling down the front straightaway coming to the checkered flag.
That was not the most graceful way to start the season, as we know, but it ended up, you talk about the way the season ended, it ended on a high note.
Things can happen on a speedway. Everything could be fine, and in a blink of an eye, it's mayhem. And that's what happened in the test. I think Dale was right. I mean, he needed to see what the limits were of what he could push, and probably pushed the envelope too hard. And next thing you know, you had 11, 12 cars trying to find an avenue to escape disaster.
Now, have you had talks with Jeff since the testing? I mean, I'm sure you have, about the limits that he can go to after what he learned from the wreck and testing in January.
I was down in the hall with him after it was over, and we replayed it a few times and talked about some drafting stuff that the two of us felt like it'll come into play when we get back there. And along as the week goes on, we get the 125s out of the way on Thursday. We'll talk again a little bit, but the thing about it is I've been doing it so long, and so has he, obviously, and we pretty much got a pretty good handle on things, but there's always things to remind each other, and so that'll basically be our talk. And we talk a lot on the radio too. I mean, when it's time to get down to it, we cover the bases.
And the 2014 made very little changes in the offseason regarding the team. Really, what's the feeling right now, the anticipation level to get to Daytona? I'm sure some of the team members are already down in Daytona, but right now I would imagine the excitement for the 2013 season for all of Hendrick Motorsports is really at an all-time high right now.
It is for every team because we all got a clean slate, and we have brand new cars, so there's a lot where I guess no one feels like another organization has an advantage over them of the top organizations because they're all starting fresh with a brand new car. No one has a notebook. And when you have some time in off season to recharge your batteries a little bit, everybody's excited. Everybody's ready to get out of the house and go back to the racetrack. And so we're all, chomping at the bit, so to say, to get started and feel that. I think I've heard the word excited a billion times in the last 3 weeks with the media tour. And it's just part of it, It's like, this is what we do. When you're away for a while, you can't wait to get back to it. When we get to homestead, we can't wait for it to end. So it's the longest season in sports. But yes, we're all excited about going. I think for our particular team, you're right, we had very, very little change. We had one new road mechanic. Pit crew's the same. The thing for us was we had so much, our season was such a roller coaster, and the bottom ends of the roller coaster were just human error, part error, races like one comes to mind is Dover. We had a 14-second lead and gave up the race. I mean, if we can just sew those things up and continue on with how we finished Homestead, we have the potential to be in the fight at the end of the year and not take ourselves out. And I think that's the same for every team.
Yeah, well, I put together a little preview for the season that we'll talk about later in the show. And with my Hendrick Motorsports preview, I see no reason why all 4 cars shouldn't be in the hunt for the championship this year. You guys have the best cars, the best equipment, the best drivers in the entire sport. And I really see Hendrick Motorsports being all 4 drivers being contenders.
Well, I would agree with that. I mean, it's hard. It's harder than it may even seem from the outside looking in because so much can go wrong. But I like our chances. We did it last year with all 4 teams in the chase. Obviously, we had to fight our way in Richmond the last night, and thank God for that rain delay because it gave us a chance to get a timeout and collect our thoughts. But that in itself tells you just how hard it is. I mean, the 18 team came upon misfortune, and we made a good, team thought out change during that rain delay and came out guns a-blazing, and I think we made it by 3 points at the end of the race, so it's just crazy.
Hey, kudos to Alan Gustafson as well for cutting that chain to make the drive-off a lot better for Jeff, too, in that race.
That guy does not get anywhere near the recognition he deserves. He's really good at what he does.
And one last question for you before we let you go. The announcement coming this week about the anticipated rule change for 2013 regarding qualifying. We're going to go away from getting your qualifying order based on practice speeds. There were quite a few loopholes there that some drivers and teams were able to take advantage of. We're going to go back to a random draw. Happy about seeing this go back to the old format?
Me personally, I'm very happy. I mean, it got to where qualifying was losing a little bit of its luster, and the reward of it was your pit stall selection moreover than the effort, and it changed the way we unloaded off the trucks every week. Getting back to this format puts a little more drama and a little more excitement for the fans that pay the money to come see us qualify each weekend, and it puts a little bit of chance back into it. So I think on a whole, industry-wise, we're pretty happy that it's changed back to this.
I think the fans are going to respond and be very happy with it as well. Hopefully the attendance for qualifying continues to rise. Eddie, we're certainly looking forward to having you back next week and all the way until May. We're extremely grateful for your time in the coming weeks and months, and we're ready to get back to racing. So good luck this week at the Sprint Unlimited, and we will talk to you again next week.
Yes, ma'am. Thanks for having me.
All right.
Thank you.
And that is Eddie DeHaat, spotter for the 24 of Jeff Gordon, going into the Sprint Unlimited this weekend. Really, not only as a contender, but a favorite. I mean, Jeff Gordon has 3 Daytona 500 wins. Of course, it wasn't, 2 years ago that he won the formerly known as the Budweiser Shootout, and then qualifying these Hendrick Motorsports Chevrolets. Also 2 years ago, it was him and Junior on the front row. We know they qualify well. There's going to be a lot of players in the Sprint Unlimited. Again, this Saturday night, we are ready to get back to racing. We're going to take a break right now. We're going to jump to our season previews when we come back with our NASCAR insider, Jeff Cheatham.